Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Sir,
sorry
two
for
windows are running, sir. Two windows are running. Please mute one.
yeah, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Is it audible now, ma'am?
Echo is coming, sir. Now it is okay, sir. It was
Is
stable.
it okay?
Yes, sir, but echo is coming from your side, sir.
Okay, ma'am.
Please check it.
Like I'll try to rectify. Is it fine now, ma'am?
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry for the technical glitch. Good morning, everyone. It's my honor to welcome Dr. M. Vittal, sir, to this FTP on molecular manufacturing. Sir is a BSc graduate from Usmania University, a MSc gold medalist from Kakari University, and he has done his MPhil PhD from University of Hyderabad. Sir has over 32 years of experience in teaching and 40 years in research. He has awarded as State's Best Teacher in 2016 by Telangana State Government. Sir served as the Director of RDCC OU, the Chairman of Board of Studies OU, the Coordinator of DST FIST OU, and has held various other administrative posts in his term. Sir has contributed immensely in research areas of solid-state chemistry, material science, and nanomaterials. He has published over 150 papers in various reputed national and international journals and has carried out 50 research projects. He has also authored many books and has patent to his credit. Sir was elected as Fellow of Andhra Pradesh Academy of Sciences FAPAS, served as member of AP Telangana Academy of Sciences and Material Research Society of India. Sir has 1 year postdoctoral research experience at University of Birmingham, UK, and the University of Milton Keynes as Commission of European Communities Fellow. He also has 1 year experience as a brain pool scientist at Korea Research Institute of Chemical Technology. He is also a recipient of major research grants from DST, UGC, and CSIR. Sir is currently working as a VSF faculty fellow and deputy coordinator of UPE-OU. There are many more achievements to his credit, which cannot be summarized in this short span. Without taking any more time, I would request Dr. M. Vittal, sir, to take over this session and welcome the, sir to this FDP session. Thank you, sir.
Sir, Vittal, sir, please unmute your speaker, sir.
Srinivas garu. ఇప్పుడు ఫుల్ స్క్రీన్ కనబడుతుందా? చేశాను. Okay. Is it audible to everyone?
Yes, sir, audible.
Okay, okay.
No, at the outset, let me thank the authorities of CBIT Hyderabad in general and Professor Srinivasulu in particular for inviting me to deliver a lecture in the FDB program sponsored by the AICTE authorities. To start with, I have to give you a brief introduction about nanomaterials, which we have been doing since last 2 decades. Although we are not very much concentrating only on nanomaterials, but nanomaterials has become a part of our research programs. And it is my pleasure to share some of my results with young faculty members and also with the students. The topic I have chosen is nanomaterials for energy and environmental applications. As you know that the current scenario is based on energy production, energy conservation, and environmental protections. How nanomaterials going to play a pivotal role in energy conservation, and environmental applications? This is quite a very broad area, and therefore I will be mostly concentrating on materials which we have been doing for quite some time and how they actually assist us in energy as well as environment fronts. Now, I heard a lecture by a famous physical chemist, Prashant V. Kamath from University of Notre Dame, and this lecture was presented. Whatever screen I am showing is actually taken from his lecture, which he has presented about 4 or 5 years back in one of the conferences. So if you look at the humanity's top 10 problems for the next 50 years, you see the 1, 2, and 4 positions. They are occupied by energy, water, and environment. Now, I don't want to go into the rest of the 7 parameters, but 1, 2, and 4 have become very relevant in the present day scenario. In fact, I wanted to show some of the newspaper clippings, since we are getting from Hyderabad as recent past, that is about 5-6 days back, whatever paper cuttings I wanted to show, but that gives a wrong meaning. But water is everywhere actually in Hyderabad now. We are facing with the floods in Hyderabad. So some of the pictures which I am going to show you will reflect the present situation in and around Hyderabad, and also globally also it is the same. So the major problems of the present globe is that energy as well as environmental pollution. Everywhere you see it is actually, pollution has become, an important parameter. The reasons are not far to seek, because the population is growing, industrialization is growing, and then as a result of that, you are having all factors that are influencing the environment. Particularly, we means our research group is concentrating on, decontamination of water with reference to organic pollutants. Because if you see, India produces the cloths which are actually, it occupies top 5 positions in the world, rankings. Now, the cloth industry uses lot of organic dyes. Now, these dyes are actually coated onto the cloth to give different colors. So these organic dyes, if you look at the process, about 30 to 40% of the organic dyes are released into the water streams. Now, these organic dyes, they are supposed, in the factories, they are supposed to clean it and then release into the into the stream. But unfortunately, without proper treatment, they are releasing. And as a result of that, the water bodies such as tanks, rivers, small ponds, they are getting polluted. Now, this is one aspect. Now, as a result of the water pollution, the soil is also getting polluted. And then the other picture shows that, air is also getting polluted because of, industrialization. So these factors have to be addressed by the scientists. Now, one is actually that government has to impose strict conditions. Now, this is not in our hands. As academician, we cannot penetrate into the authorities of the government. But as a scientist, what we can do? Can we actually design materials which are going to improve the air quality, which are going to improve the water quality? Then we can work on those lines. So the engineers and the scientists play an important role in designing the materials which will help the environment to restore its original status. Now, this slide is also copied from somewhere, but please do remember that there are many slides which I copied, and there are many slides which are from our own research group. So it is a combination of both. Now, pollution prevention hierarchy, if you see, it is increasing greenery. Prevention and reduction is one of the important aspect. If you cannot follow that, then recycle and reuse. If you cannot do that, treatment it. Or the last one is actually disposal. Now, why water is so important? Now, water is so important because it has become one of the essential components. Without water, perhaps we cannot live. Now, without food, possibly, you can go for 1-2 days, but without water, it is very difficult. So, some of the, things I have given here, looking at water, you might think that it is the most simple thing around. Pure water, it is colorless, odorless, and tasteless. But it is not at all simple and plain, as it is vital for all life on earth. Where there is a water, there is a life, and where water is scarce, life has to struggle or just throw in the towel. Now, how do we actually get drinking water, or how do we actually treat the polluted water? There are certain methodologies. I am not going to completely give a picture of how water treatment is being done, but I will give an overall picture, general methods. If you see the water treatment methods, it is basically 4 times. Biological methods are there, physicochemical, chemical, and then advanced oxidation processes. Perhaps I am not going to concentrate on the first 3 because they are tested and trusted procedures, but it has its own merits as well as demerits. But advanced oxidation process is one process which is actually found to be convenient, economically viable, and easy to do it. Now, this advanced oxidation process is further divided into 5 types, like ozonation, phenton-like, and peroxide photolysis, heterogeneous photocatalysis, and electrochemically mediated process. Now, among all these things, because ozonation means very simple. You have to take ozone and then treat the polluted water with ozone or hydrogen peroxide. Now, this is very simple. Ozone actually decomposes to give rise to oxygen and molecular oxygen, dioxygen plus oxygen radical. Now, this oxygen radical is going to be the active species in destroying the organic pollutants. Similarly, I have given the other 3, but I am not going to actually tell all the 3, except the fact that I am going to concentrate on heterogeneous photocatalysis, which we have been doing for quite some time, and then we got some good results as well. Now, this picture actually shows in a simple manner how photocatalyst works. Now, purpose of the photocatalyst is to address the global energy and environment related problems and to achieve efficient utilization of solar radiation. As you know that the the oil or petrol, whatever you call it, diesel, is going to last in another 20, 30 years. Then where do we go from there? So we need to depend only on solar light, and therefore use solar light for good purpose, so that your energy resources can be conserved. Now, on the right side, I am showing you one statistical data which is very important. Please note down this if you are a student. The magnitude of the solar energy striking the Earth's surface in 1 hour, within bracket I have given 4.3 into 10 power 20 joules, is even higher than that consumed on the planet in 1 year. In 1 year, the entire planet is consuming approximately 4.1 into 10 power 20 joules. This was the figure in 2001. But even then, the power one is there, 10 power 20, that makes all the difference. So, in 1 hour, whatever light or whatever energy we are receiving from the sun is more than sufficient to serve the entire globe for 1 year. Now, this slide actually shows how photocatalyst and nanotechnology can work together for more sustainable growth. How photocatalysts work? Now, this simple picture I have given, although it is not that simple, but I have simplified it. Now, we use actually a photocatalyst. A catalyst is something, a material which actually accelerates the rate of the reaction. And normally it is a semiconducting material. So when it is a semiconducting material, and then if you irradiate with light of a suitable wavelength, which will excite the electrons from its valence band to conduction band, you get what are called excited electrons in the in the conduction band, and holes in the valence band. Now, both excited electrons and holes are active species. Now, excited electrons, for example, can combine with oxygen, molecular oxygen, to form superoxide radical. Similarly, hole can actually react with water to give OH radical. In other words, irradiation of light, visible light, onto the surface of the semiconductor leads to the formation of electrons and holes. These electrons and holes will react with oxygen, dissolved oxygen, and also water to form active species. Now, these radicals are hyperactive. They react with whatever is present nearby and then decompose into its products. For example, I will give a very simple example. In domestic electricity, we use the pipes for to cover the electric wires. But if you notice, after 10 years, if you just tap the PVC pipe, it will be broken into pieces. Now, the reason is that the air contains many radicals. Now, these radicals are going and then attacking the PVC pipe, and PVC is nothing but polyvinyl, PV or PVC, is a polymer. Now, once the radical attacks, the polymer chain will be broken. Once the chain is broken, its strength will be lost, and therefore easily it will be broken into pieces. Now, the radicals, hydroxyl radical and superoxide radical, will oxidize whatever is present in its nearby. If it is an organic molecule, it will react with organic molecule to form further fragments. In other words, a big organic dye molecule can be fragmented into pieces, eventually to carbon dioxide and water in the presence of radicals. Now, this is exactly the below. Actually, I have shown you the methylene blue is one of the organic dye used in the cloth industry. Now, we have prepared a material called potassium vanadium molybdenum oxide. Now, this parent material is actually photo inactive, or it does not degrade any organic molecules, any dyes also. But what we have done is we have doped this oxide with nitrogen. Now, nitrogen doping will alter the band gap energy of the photocatalyst, and now the visible light it can absorb and then eventually attack the methylene blue, and it will decompose. Now you can see this, on the extreme left, this is 0 time irradiation. On the extreme right, 180 minutes irradiation of visible light. You can see that it is almost disappear. And one of my students, Mr. Raji Reddy, has done this work and published in a journal called Clean Soil Air Water. This is actually widely international publications in 2016. A wonderful piece of work. Further, he has done a few more things, but just to demonstrate how the photocatalyst works, is that we take actually the methylene blue, add the catalyst, and irradiate time. As a function of time, if you measure its optical density, we will see at the end of the 180, it is almost more than 90% degraded. How practically we can apply this to, let us say that, in Hyderabad, we have Hussain Sagar, which is highly polluted. In fact, one of my students, went to Hussain Sagar, and with great difficulty, closing his nose, he obtained 2 liters of water. Now, having got the Hussain Sagar water, then we need to address this with reference to our catalyst. But unfortunately, if you see the Hussain Sagar water, I believe that only Lord Buddha and Lord Ganesha only can survive. Nobody else can survive in Hussain Sagar. Now, Hussain Sagar water we have taken, but you can see with your naked eye lot of suspended particles. So we have to remove the suspended particles first before we subject our catalyst to Hussain Sagar water. So to remove the suspended particles, we need to pass the polluted water, Hussain Sagar water, through activated charcoal. Now, we have done this literally we have done. So for 1 liter of Hussain Sagar water, it requires activated charcoal worth 450 rupees approximately. Worth 450 rupees before we actually go into the photocatalysis. In other words, to treat or to remove the suspended particles of Hussain Sagar, we need to spend 450 rupees only to remove suspended particles. Then we have to dissolve organic solids and inorganic solids. We have to remove that. Now, this is not viable because to treat 1 liter of water, we are spending 450 rupees. This is unrealistic because this is highly expensive. Therefore, we need to find alternate solutions. So what is the alternate solution? First thing is that, the entire Hussain Sagar water should be first removed that and protect it without the effluents entering into the Hussain Sagar. But that is not in our hands. That is the government has to take care of it. So let us not go into those details. Now, another important photocatalytic experiment is water splitting into hydrogen and oxygen. As I said earlier, the hydrogen is going to be the future energy source because hydrogen plus oxygen gives rise to water plus energy, and that energy you can use it. In future, we are going to get what are known as fuel cells or fuel cells driven cars where hydrogen is being used as a source of energy. So how hydrogen can be generated? Now this also can be done by a process called water splitting. Now in this water splitting, once again the photocatalysts play an important role. This also we have done in our laboratory, but unfortunately the amount of hydrogen that is being generated is not sufficient. It is actually in microliters only, because so far the benchmark material is strontium titanate, SrTiO3. I have shown here also SrTiO3, which is showing something like 200 to 300 microliters per hour per gram of the catalyst. Now this is the highest efficiency so far achieved, but even we are in microliters only, but we want liters and liters, tons of liters of hydrogen gas is required. So once again, the process is very simple, that we have a semiconductor, you irradiate with the sunlight, then electrons and holes are created, and this electrons will react with water to form hydrogen oxygen. Now This, please remember that this is actually delta G is negative. That is why we have to give energy and then get it done. Now, can any semiconductor be used? No, you cannot actually get hydrogen and oxygen for every semiconductor. It has to meet certain guidelines. These guidelines are, first of all, the band gap energy. That is the band gap energy definition is the energy difference between valence band and conduction band. That is called band gap energy. Band gap energy must be above 1.3 electron volts, and it should be below 3.2 electron volts, because above 3.2 electron volts comes in the UV region, whereas sunlight contains only less than 5% UV, 40 to 50% visible, and the rest infrared radiation. So the major component of sunlight is visible light. Therefore, we should have a visible light active semiconductor. If it is not, then you tailor the band gap so that its band gap comes into the visible region. So is it sufficient if the band gap energy is let us say 1.23 volts? Then also it is not sufficient, because its oxidation and reduction potentials also should match. Now, normally I have not shown the diagram here. This is 0 and this is minus 1.23. So 0 to 1.23. So 1.23 is the one. See, I have given here. See, 0 is the hydrogen redox potential. 1.23 is the oxygen redox potential. Now, the conduction band minimum should lie above 0 and valence band maximum should be below 1.23. Please see the scale. This is versus normal hydrogen electrode. Please remember this scale. This is very important for somebody who is doing extensive research in semiconducting materials. So the criteria is the semiconductor must have a band gap energy which is approximately slightly above 1.23 volts, and the band potentials should match this diagram. Then it is very easy. Now, very often we do not get semiconductors whose band gap is less than 3.2 electron volts. Then we need to change its band gap. So the number I have given here, band gap greater than 1.2 and sufficiently small to make efficient use of solar spectrum. Band levels suitable for water splitting, they must be suitable. For example, this will be always above and this will be always below this band levels. And once again, please remember that H2O gives rise to decomposition is actually delta G is positive. It is non-spontaneous reaction. Now we have used semiconductors as photocatalysts, and this is once again I have elaborated that the band potentials must be above this and below this. Now if you notice this, for example, cadmium selenide, even titanium dioxide is also having, zinc oxide, they are extensively investigated for this reason only, because titanium dioxide, zinc oxide, CDSE and CDS, AgCl, AgBr, AgI, they all produce oxygen and hydrogen once you subject to water splitting. But for example, if you take Bi2O3, it will not produce hydrogen, but it will produce oxygen. So these, some of the finer points, you will get it once you start investigating on semiconducting materials. Now, there are certain drawbacks also, because major drawback is that once you excite a semiconductor with light, you get electron in the conduction band and hole in the valence band. But the kinetics says that this electron and holes will recombine to form once again the release energy. But this recombination will not help us. So somehow we should actually reduce the recombination rate of electron and hole. Now the drawbacks, I said, rapid recombination of electron hole, poor activation poor because surface area may be less, and then rapid backward reaction during water splitting. These are some of the drawbacks, demerits. Now, how to modify the band gap energy of a semiconductor? Now, this is very simple. This we have been doing for quite some time. There are methods to change the band gap from higher value to a lower value. Now, there are two methods. One is actually metal ion doping. I can dope in a small amount, one metal instead of another metal, in place of another metal. Or alternatively, we can also dope a non-metal like nitrogen, oxygen. Sorry, we take oxides only: nitrogen, fluorine, chlorine, and sulfide, selenide, etc. Then there is another method. This is called co-catalyst loading, or SPR, surface plasma resonance. Now, this is not actually the correct platform to elaborate the phenomena of SPR, but when you load a material with noble metals such as silver, gold, etc., then silver and gold, they exhibit, and to some extent copper, exhibit SPR phenomena, surface plasma resonance, and as a result of that, the rate of formation of radicals increases enormously. As a result of that, you get more activity. Then another thing is actually Z scheme photocatalysis. Now, when I was actually giving a lecture for my MSc students, when I say Z scheme, sir, do we have Y scheme, X scheme? See, there is no Y scheme, there is no X scheme, there is only Z scheme. Now, Z scheme is nothing but actually we have to make two semiconductors and then prepare a physical mixture, and then you will see that a physical mixture is having more photoactivity compared to the two individual components present in it. Perhaps in one of my slides I am going to show you, because one of my students who is right now in NIT Rourkela as assistant professor, he has done some work on Z scheme photocatalysis, and then I am going to show that result in the next few slides. Now, this is simply how the energy level diagram slightly changes when you dope with an impurity. See, what happens is that normally valence band and conduction band are made up of either oxygen orbitals or metal orbitals, or vice versa. So what happens, suppose if I am doping nitrogen in place of oxygen, nitrogen in place of oxygen partially, which I am going to show some slides also, then what happens is that you will be having another band here, something like this, and then this conduction band minimum has come down, and therefore from UV it will go to the visible light. Similarly, if I am doping a metal, then it will create a donor level here, and then it goes, the band gap energy decreases. Professor Srinivasalu, is it audible properly? Hello?
Yes, sir, it is audible, sir.
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, in case if there is any problem, kindly let me know. Okay.
Yes, sir, sure.
Now, new valence band formation by doping of non-metals I have just now shown here, and this is one method of tailoring the band gap energy of a semiconductor. So this can be conveniently done by a chemist using certain techniques such as Sol-Gel method or hydrothermal methods. Now, for the photocatalysis experiment, initially I started the experiments in sunlight. But what happens is that during the rainy season, we may not get sunlight to the extent that we get it during the summer. Therefore, it is always advisable to use the laboratory conditions. Now here, this is actually photocatalysis setup, which I actually procured from my DST project. And when light is switched on, you will get like this. Now, please remember that in each tube I am showing here, we place the polluted water plus the catalyst. And then these pipes actually, for bubbling the air, because oxygen is required for oxidations, and therefore we bubble air so that always oxygen is present for the degradation of organic dyes. So at regular intervals of time, we pipette out about 2 to 3 ml of the solution, you centrifuge it, and then measure the optical density using a UV visible spectrophotometer to check the concentration of the dye solution. Now, what are the factors that influence the photocatalytic activity? Now, I have given here. Excuse me. Now, the major factors that are influencing the photocatalysis is the particle size, surface area, crystallinity, and rate of electron-hole recombination. Why do we say that the particle size is essential? Very simple to visualize. As the particle size decreases, the surface area increases. When the surface area increases, the active sites increase, and therefore the photocatalytic activity increases. So surface area, particle size, both are related, and the crystallinity. Now this also it influences. Why it influences? For example, I take titanium dioxide. Titanium dioxide crystalline, titanium dioxide amorphous. Now amorphous shows less activity compared to this one. Now if you ask a specific reason, possibly it is not possible to give a correct answer, but highly crystalline materials will give better activity compared to their counter amorphous forms. And then somehow you have to see to it that rate of electron hole recombination must be reduced. Now this is a very complicated factor, because many studies have been carried out, and they say that defects in the solid will improve or will decrease the rate of electron hole recombination. Now, when the particle size is less, that means we have to prepare nano-sized materials. Therefore, nanomaterials are important for us. Now, I give just a brief introduction about nanomaterials, because this topic I have to concentrate on photocatalysis. But I need to give a very brief introduction about the bulk and nanomaterials. Now, this is once again one of the slides which I copied. The next big thing is small, but the obvious question is, how small should small be to be the next big thing? Now, we are talking about the nanometer scale. We are sitting at 10⁻⁹ meters, and then we are manipulating the properties. Now, some of the objects I am showing, because human hair, about 50 to 150 micrometers wide, and then red and white blood cells, that is the size, and then DNA, that is the size, and then normally the head of a pin we use as a stationary item, 1 to 2 mm, and then some micro electromechanical devices and the carbon nanotube. Perhaps this is one which actually I have not paid attention during my research one, but carbon nanotubes are very important. And the presently, let me tell you, one of my students after completing PhD has joined as a chemist in cement and building materials research. It's a central government organization close to Lucknow, and then they are now devising or investigating how the construction of a slab can be reduced by incorporating, by introducing carbon nanotubes into the slab. Now, slab, consists of, it's actually very good composite material. Like we have gravel, sand, cement, water, and for reinforcement we add steel rods also. Now, I am not good at actually in engineering, but you can calculate the strength, and then for floors, number of floors, and then what is the strength required, and accordingly we can increase or decrease the slab size. But if you introduce carbon nanotubes, then the slab width can be reduced, strength can be increased, width can be reduced. In other words, you are going to reduce the cost of the slab. But unfortunately, carbon nanotubes are not, cheap. They are very costly. Therefore, one has to work out how the cost can be reduced. In the next few slides, possibly I may be having 1 or 2 slides on carbon nanotubes. Now, this is just to show you that nanomaterials has become part of our day-to-day life. Little bit of history or the nature about the nanomaterials. Why we talk about nanomaterials? Are nanomaterials only known now, or perhaps several centuries ago also nanomaterials were existing? Now, there's a object you see. If this is illuminated from outside, it looks like this, and if it is illuminated from inside, it looks like this. Same vessel, but the colors are different depending on the position of the light. Now, it contains actually silver and gold nanoparticles. Now, please remember that this object is actually 4th century object. Okay. Now, this is the ratio. Now, the explanation is also given. Pottery using nano-sized particles has been used for thousands of years. An example from 4th century AD is so-and-so and can be seen at the British Museum. The cup is made from a glass which appears red, jade green in reflected light, but when light is shown directly through the glass, it appears red. This unusual optical effect is caused by 400 ppm gold and 300 ppm silver contained within the glass, producing 70 nanometer particles. Now, in fact, we have also investigated some glasses, but not this type. We investigated lead oxide based, B2O3 based, P2O5 based glasses. Now, by looking at this picture, I always believe that Faraday would have got another, Nobel Prize way back in 1957. He has synthesized gold colloidal solution. This is actually gold nanoparticles. Perhaps he has named it as a gold colloidal solution, but it is indeed nanoparticles. This has come in Aldrich, catalog front page, and this had a transmission electron microscope or AFM or SEM was known during that time, 1857. Possibly you would have discovered that. This I skip. Now, this person actually I have to mention, because whenever we talk of nanomaterials, he is considered as the father of nanomaterials, Richard Feynman. Now, he was actually, he was giving one lecture at the American Physical Society and then saying that there is plenty of room at the bottom. Now, I would like to describe a field in which little has been done, nothing has been done. This field is not quite the same as the others. It might tell us much of a great interest about the strange phenomena that occurs in complex situations. It would have been an enormous number of technical applications. What I want to talk about is the problem of manipulating. See, I made it in the red, manipulating and controlling things on a small scale. And he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1961 or 62. How do we characterize nanomaterials? Because once you prepare with naked eye, I cannot distinguish. You need to have spectroscopic techniques to identify the nanomaterials. Perhaps I feel one of the best methods is powder X-ray diffractometer. This is quite cheap and available everywhere, because right now in Osmania University we don't have TEM. We have SEM in College of Technology and in Physics, but TEM we don't have. AFM we do not have. Therefore, powder XRD is the best technique. But you require SEM and TEM also. But at least to know the size, approximate size, we need to have the powder X-ray diffractogram. So FESEM, TEM, HRTEM, AFM, atomic force microscopy, and surface area measurements by BET and BJH methods. These things will give the status whether the material prepared is bulk or nano. What is so great about nanomaterials? There are two things that I would like to tell you. One is actually the color changes as the size changes. As the size changes, the color changes. As the size changes, the band gap energy changes. And the second one is the surface area changes. Now, This just a picture, I will show everywhere, that if you take 10 grams of nanoparticles and then put one after the other, it will occupy one cricket stadium. So that is actually the area of, approximately area of 10 grams of nanoparticles. Now, there are two methods of synthesis. One called top down and bottom up methods. Now, surface area increases when you decrease the size. Simply, this diagram shows I have a 2 into 2 into cube, 2 into 2 into 2 cube, and there are 6 faces. We get a 24 centimeter square is the area, but I will make into 2 into 4 and into 8, so that 8 cubes of 1 into 1 into 1, and then surface area of 1 cube will be 6 centimeters square, and the 8 cubes will be 48 centimeters square. So as the size is decreased, actually same material, but surface area increases. So I told you that there are two approaches, top down, bottom up, but we cannot at least in our lab, we are not doing top down. Top down is nothing but this is a known technique to everyone. This is called hammering technique or milling technique. That is, you have a large sized material, you go on hammer it, it will be made into pieces and pieces and pieces. This technique is known to all of us. What do we do in general in domestic? This one, we take grains and then crush them into powder, flour we get it, and then we use it. This is a milling technique. But a chemist is interested only in bottom up procedure. That is, we start with the ions and then build the molecules. It's the same. I am just showing. Now, what is the role of an engineer or a scientist? Because this is, basically meant for engineering and science students. What is the role of a engineering student or a science student? You can prepare nanomaterials by green methods. I will show you 1 or 2 slides where green methods, it requires that you don't have to use chemical. Then design new visible light semiconductors. Design a composite which shows a better photoactivity compared to individual components. So this is actually what can be done by an engineering or a science student. Now, which type of materials normally one can investigate? I have given the long list, but one need not do all. But we have seen that perovskites are very important, pyrochlores are important, glycerides, palmirides. They are very important because they have a skeletal type of structure where the surface area is always large. What are the methods of preparation of nanomaterials? You can use all these techniques, but I prefer the third one, sol gel method and hydrothermal methods. Now, hydrothermal method is also actually not new to us. We have been using this for quite some time. I'm sure that in every house we have a pressure cooker. Why do we actually use pressure cooker? The reasons are not far to seek. We can cook in less time with less energy because we are cooking at a high pressure, and therefore what you can cook in the open vessel for 20 minutes, you can do it in for less than 5 minutes or about 5 minutes in a cooker. So the sol gel method and hydrothermal method are very important. Although I may be scanning all the methods. In a solid state method, all the reactants are ground thoroughly and heated at a different temperature for longer hours. So this is what generally we do it. Stoichiometric ratio we take it, you grind it in a mortar and pestle, put it in a furnace, and then calcine, you get the product. But I told you that solid state method has a lot of disadvantages. Sol gel method is actually, I consider that it's a user friendly and then economically viable procedure. In a typical sol gel method, we prepare materials bulk as well as nano. Now, these are some of the compounds which are used as a gelating reagent: ethylene glycol, urea, PVA, etc. Now, at least one example I will give you. Ethylene glycol is, if you are a chemist, it is CH2OH, CH2OH. This is 2 carbon, and then put OH on the first carbon, OH on the second carbon. ethylene glycol. Now what happens to ethylene glycol when it is heated? Ethylene glycol is a liquid at room temperature, but if you is a soluble in water also. So if you heat ethylene glycol, it slowly polymerizes to form polyethylene glycol. Polyethylene glycol. So what we do is that we take the materials. I think I have a slide. You take metal nitrate solutions, and then we add citric acid because this is a very good ligand, and then we age it, and then we add ethylene glycol, and then once again you heat it, then it becomes a porous solid, a black mass. Now this black color appears because ethylene glycol is a carbon compound, and when you heat a carbon compound, it becomes black because it is reduced, and subsequently it will be oxidized. Then slowly we heat it, we get a precursor, and then you put it in a furnace, and then you heat it, we will get the desired materials. Now this gives nano-sized as well as bulk material also. So essentially what happens when you put ethylene glycol, it polymerizes, and inorganic ions are trapped into the organic matrix, and when you decompose it, the organic component, whenever it is decomposes, it liberates energy, because majority of the organic reactions, almost 99.9999% organic reactions are exothermic reactions. So it liberates heat. That heat liberated is picked up by the inorganic ions, and what you can actually prepare bulk material at 1000 degrees, you can prepare at 400 to 500 only. In fact, this we have used for one of my student has done slightly different. That is, instead of Sol-Gel method, they have used inorganic metathesis method to prepare nanomaterials at as low as 500 degrees centigrade for materials such as barium titanate, etc. Then I told you that hydrothermal method. Now in this method, the reacting species are taken in solution and heated under pressure. See, normally this is the solution. We transfer this into a Teflon cup, and then this cup is actually inserted into the steel case, and then you tighten it so that the air will not leak it, and then put it in an oven and then heat it. Now whatever we are having in Usmania University Hyderabad, we cannot go beyond 230. See, if you buy a hydrothermal machine from Anthony Parr, you can go up to higher temperatures also, but that is a little bit expensive. But one should buy Anthony Parr hydrothermal machine also, and we can go in our lab up to 230 degrees only. So you get actually a nano-sized material, but there are one or two disadvantages for this. Disadvantage is that we cannot prepare in bulk quantity. Suppose I want about 10 to 20 grams of the material. I do not have the capacity. I have only 100 ml capacity bomb. So I can prepare maximum about 1 to 2 grams only. Now I told you that one can use a green methods to prepare nanomaterials. Now this is a this experiment is only to demonstrate for BSc students. I have done. I have not prepared silver nanoparticles using this method. This is only to show that in a BSc lab one can prepare nanomaterials. Now preparation of Ag nanoparticles using tulasi leaves. Now tulasi leaves we are very much familiar. Every day actually we may do some puja also, and what is important is that I have given 4 steps. 10 grams of the fresh tulasi leaves, you take it and then you wash it and then cut into pieces, and then take about 200 ml of water, distilled water or deionized water, and then you stir it for about 1 minute at room temperature. But I said 1 minute, but it is better to for 5 minutes you stir it. Then what happens? You filter it. When you filter it, you get the extract. You have done nothing except that tulasi leaves you have taken and then stirred it at room temperature. You are not even boiled also. Then you have taken silver nitrate solution, and then I think I may be having a video. Let me just click this. Yeah, I've just done this experiment in my lab and verified also silver nanoparticles are formed. But only thing is that, I cannot show you the particles because that requires SEM or TEM. But you can actually record its UV visible spectrum and confirm that silver nanoparticles are formed. So I have taken 5 ml of the extract and stirred it, and then 25 ml of aqueous solution of silver nitrate, and for 5 minutes you do it. Now after 5 minutes it looks like this. Now immediately you may not be able to distinguish that silver nanoparticles are formed, but if you go to that, after 30 minutes you see the color is changed, and I will show you the spectrum also. Now what has happened actually? Now this Tulasi contains some organic compounds which are antioxidants. So silver plus is reduced to silver nanoparticles because of these materials. Now please do not ask me what is the structure of all these things. I also do not know, but I have just copied it from the literature. Now the water soluble ingredients present in the extract are responsible for reduction of metal ions and efficient stabilization of nanoparticles. Now why I have shown this experiment? Possibly to investigate, the young students can investigate. You need not take Tulasi extract. Take some other extract and then try to prepare different nanomaterials even at a room temperature in the given laboratory. But only thing is identification may be slightly difficult. Now this is after 12 hours you see the nanoparticles. This is a Tulasi extract. So now you see the UV spectrum. Now this is actually Tulasi extract is this, and you see after 12 hours, if you record, this is the signature. Now copper nanoparticles, if it is present, it gives an absorption between 400 and 500. Now let us not go into the theory because the theory wins. Once again, it may take more than 1 hour to explain. But that Tulasi leaves can give you silver nanoparticles. You can also use reducing agents also, because we have now technology to prepare silver nanoparticles in whatever color you want. You can prepare it. For example, I show you. We take silver nitrate and polyethylene glycol and aniline. You see red colored nanoparticles of silver. Similarly, silver nitrate, PVA, polyvinyl alcohol, and then aniline. You see orange colored silver nanoparticles. Then you take ascorbic acid as the reducing agent. Now the color is changed. Now please remember that this I demonstrated for BSc students. All the experiments I demonstrated in the class itself. Now sodium citrate, if you add, actually the color is once again changed. Now I told you sometime back that carbon nanotubes are very interesting materials, although I have not done that because the synthesis of carbon nanotubes is not easy. You have to have a different technique to prepare it. Now why carbon nanotubes are so important? They have unique properties and considered as the material of the future, and seemingly infinite applications and possible health issues also can be addressed. Now they are composed of actually interlocking carbon atoms, or you say that the graphene, you take it and then roll the graphene sheet like paper you take and then roll it. It becomes a tube actually, and it is actually 100,000 times thinner than average human hair, but 200 times stronger than steel. So this is the main reason why carbon nanotubes are being investigated to put into the slab material, so that the strength increases and the cost decreases. But unfortunately, carbon nanotube cost is more. So I told you that graphene sheet, you take it and roll it up, you get SWNT, single wall nano carbon nanotubes. This is how it looks like. And we have different types: single wall carbon nanotubes, multi-wall carbon nanotubes, and can be metallic or semiconducting depending on their geometry. I don't want to go into the details, and I have to confess that I have not done any investigations on carbon nanotubes, although I have 2-3 problems to be investigated, but I cannot prepare CNTs at my lab, and therefore I am not doing it. Multi-walled, and then this is how actually the SEM and TEM pictures look like. Now I don't want to go into the details, this is a comparison, but I would like to go for applications. This 1 minute at least I should spend. What are the applications of carbon nanotubes? They are used as energy storage materials. Hydrogen storage, you can do it. As a supercapacitor, you can use it. If field emitting devices, transistors, nano probes and sensors, and composite materials. This is where actually it comes in the engineering section. It can be used in engineering materials. But recently I have read a few papers that even carbon nanospheres can also be substituted for carbon nanotubes. But the results are in the primitive stage, but somebody will definitely do the investigations on carbon nanospheres, although we are doing it on a different scale. Now carbon nanotubes, about 60 to 80% of hydrogen can be stored, 100 to 200 times stronger than steel, and it can be used in IT and medical fields. Civil engineering, yes, mixed with cement, water and sand and gravel. This is what I said, that my student is investigating on this. For every 6 carbon atoms of CNT, 1 atom of lithium can be stored. Therefore, CNTs are used as a lithium-ion batteries. You know the story about the lithium. Lithium is going to be an endangered element. Therefore, the government organizations have come up with plans to recirculate or reuse lithium. That is why organizations such as CMET Hyderabad, Center for Electronic Materials, has a project on lithium-ion batteries to reuse the lithium. CNT is used in filters of the water. Now, what is the role of a scientist or an engineer? This I want that the engineering students should take up problems related to carbon nanotubes and carbon spheres. See, you can design materials for the degradation of pollutants, or you can design materials and which can be used in composites used for construction work. Now, another aspect is that the energy conservation. I have been actually concentrating on that, energy, environment, and the third one is pollution. Something like that, the 3 important parameters. Now, conservation of energy is also important. I told you the statistics about the sunlight. Now, if you can use the sunlight usefully, then possibly it will serve the purpose for us. Now once again the same, this I have already given, but once again it is repeated, that it is copied from internet only, that the magnitude of the available solar energy striking the Earth's surface in 1 hour is even higher than that consumed on the planet in 1 year. So this is the 2001 based data. So once again, this slide I have shown, I will skip this, but now I am going to show you that what we have done in our laboratory with reference to energy and environment. Now, one of my students, Dr. Ravi, has done water splitting with a material belonging to defect pyrochlore type of oxides. See, don't worry about this composition. This is called AB2O6. Actually, A2B2O7 is pyrochlore, which is actually superstructure of a fluorite. Now, if you remove the 1A and 1 oxygen, it becomes AB2O6. Now, this is called A. This is B2. Now, if you put 1.67 plus 0.33, it becomes 2 and O6. So, it is a AB2O6. Now, this material has a lot of properties. Properties are that Now this potassium ion can be exchanged with any ion, with any ion. You name an ion, that can be actually exchanged, that will go and sit in the place of potassium. You can replace with copper, you replace with cobalt, zinc, any material in the form of solution, you take it, that will go and sit here. So this is one property where the one property of the material which will lead to change in the band gap energy. So what we have done is, this material we prepared, this is a known material, but this is an unknown material. So we replaced with the tin. Now tin is having very important property, because divalent tin has a lone pair of electrons. As a result of that, it will sit at a place where the band, above the conduction band, above the valence band, and therefore the band gap energy reduces considerably. Now you look at when we prepared, this is KFEW. Now this is KFEW. This is the FESEM diagram. Now, but if you substitute with the tin, once again it doesn't change its morphology. Morphology remains the same, but potassium disappears and tin appears. Now you see that tin is appearing here. Now potassium is here, but potassium disappears, tin appears when you stir it with a tin chloride solution. Now you look at the XPS of this. Now XPS, now you look at KFEW. Now it does not contain tin peak. Now, but tin peak comes here. Now please notice this. Now this is one characterization technique, that the ion has gone into the solution. But this is not the only characterization technique. We have other techniques also. Now for example, you see the color. Color of KFEW is this color. But once you put it in tin solution, its color changes. Now once its color changes, immediately you can recognize that something chemically has happened. Now look at the powder XRD of the two materials. Now powder XRD of the two materials, if you look at it, now it looks alike. But when you expand this portion in an expanded scale, you will see that there is a shift in the D lines. Now this shift in the D lines will be sufficient for us to conclude that tin has gone into the place of potassium. Now why this occurs? This is a specific case, or it has a specific structure which permits ion exchanges. Now we have done this Rietveld analysis. Don't worry about this, because this, for journals, they ask, you do Rietveld analysis and confirm that everything. One need not worry about that, but worry about this color and the powder XRD, how it changes. Then you see that its band gap energy changes. This is a schematic band structure, but this is obtained from DRS spectrum, diffused reflectance spectrum. Now if you look at the KFEW, the conduction band is made up of iron 3D and tungsten 5D. Now valence band is made up of oxygen 2P. Now when you dope with the tin, this, you see that this oxygen 2P is now overlapping with the tin 5S. Now from 1.95 it goes into 1.45. Now a reduction in the band gap of about 0.5 is highly significant. Highly significant. Now this was actually the highlight, that we could reduce the band gap energy from 1.95 to 1.45. Now you see in the next diagram that tin doped compound has shown highest activity. This is actually methylene blue, which is a organic dye pollutant, is used as a model pollutant. Now C by C equilibrium. See, always we measure, and if it is C by C0 is 1, that means initial concentration only. Now as the time passes, time of irradiation, you will see that at 180 degrees centigrade, about 70, more than 70%, more than 70, around 70% is decomposed. Now this is significant. So methylene blue degradation occurs in the presence of under visible light irradiation. Now we have also done what are known as scavenging techniques. What are the intermediates that are formed? So we use scavenging techniques. For example, you see KFEW, SNFEW. KFN is this one. So this is this and this are same. That means SN is showing higher activity compared to parent. But when you are using the scavengers, then its activity is reduced. What do you mean by scavenger? Scavenger means actually, temporarily you are adding something which will specifically take away one reactive species. That is why, it's intermediates it will take up. Benzoquinone we use, then T-butyl or tertiary butyl alcohol also we use it. Now, in addition to that, total organic carbon also we estimated. Now, methylene blue, after 180 degrees of irradiation, you see that it is having about 100% total carbon. But KFEW, 60% only. And SN, it is only about 50% carbon is remaining now. Okay. Now, this is, the fluorescence spectra we measured. Now, fluorescence spectra or PL spectra, we call it as a photoluminescence spectra, indicates that the hole and electron recombination leads to some fluorescence signal. Now, this fluorescence signal is found to be actually minimum for SNFEW. Higher the value, the lower will be the the rate of decomposition. Now you also see that the surface area of ion substituted material increased more than 2 times. Now in addition to that, we have used cyclohexene, a pollutant, to see whether this molecule SNFEW decomposes or not. And we have seen that it will decompose into carbon dioxide and water in about 3 hours time. And that is actually, its a signature. Degradation of hydroquinone we have used, and cyclohexene we have used at different time intervals, and this is the mass spectrum. Now we have used for dye degradation, we have used for hydrogen evolution also. See, unfortunately, we don't have the facility. We got the facility, the water splitting facility we have used, that is present in IICT Hyderabad. Now you look at KFEW and SNFEW for water splitting. Hydrogen evolution, micromoles per hour. And we have seen that 71, 81. And band gap energy. Now, I told you, a few minutes back that, SRTiO3 is a benchmark material for water splitting. About 200, micromoles per hour it gives, whereas our samples gives about 81, which is 50%, less than 50% of that. But you look at the similar materials published by somewhere, they have used co-catalyst, and their hydrogen evolution is much less than our materials without co-catalyst. And this result we published in Journal of Hydrogen Energy, which is an elsewhere journal having an impact factor of about 5. About 5 is actually very decent, impact factor. And I am talking about the impact factor by Thomson-Reuter, not a predatory impact factor. Then I move on to another one where, I told you that Z scheme photocatalysts or heterojunctions will help in accelerating the photoactivity of the materials. Now, what we have done is we have prepared N-doped NaNBO3 and V-doped NaNBO3. Now, N actually goes into the oxygen site, V goes into the NB site. Please remember this. N goes into the oxygen site, V goes into NB site. So what we have done is N-doped NaNBO3 can be prepared by taking NaNBO3 and heat it around 400 in the presence of urea or in the presence of ammonia gas passing for 2 hours, you will get nitrogen doped NaNbO3. Now for V doped, while preparing itself, you take 1 minus, we take 1 minus X Nb and X of vanadium precursors and use hydrothermal method for the preparation. Now what we have done is, we have taken these two, N doped this, V doped this, and then mixed physically. Physically we mixed and then studied its properties. Now something which is really interesting thing has happened. Now you see that this is actually the powder XRD. Everything is actually same. The structure has not changed by substitution of nitrogen or vanadium. But if you look at around this peak, there is a systematic shift. Now this is sufficient for us to confirm that nitrogen and vanadium have gone into the lattice. Now you see the DRS spectrum. Now if you look at the DRS spectrum, the NaNbO3 and simple and N doped, V doped, and the composite, then you look at the change in the band gap energy. Band gap energy changed considerably. Now this picture, I'm just taking 1 minute off. Professor Srinivasalu, I'm just taking a cup of tea. 1 minute, I'm giving a break. Srinivasalu, Srinivasalu, I'm taking 1 minute break.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Professor Srinivasalu, can I continue?
Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Now this, this picture shows the FeSEM of the first one is NaNbO3, parent material, N doped material, V doped material, and the last one is the grounded, physically mixed N doped NaNbO3, V doped NaNbO3. Now this is where actually my student has scored points on the with reference to the adjudicator. Now you look at all these things, the edges are fine. So that means what? The material is intact. But you look at this picture, the edges have become actually broken. This is simply because this material and this material physically mixed and ground thoroughly. When you do that, when you grind it, the edges will actually go away. Edges will be broken because of the force we apply with the mortar and pestle. Okay, that is why the edges in this have disappeared. Now this is one important point we answered for the reviewer's question. Now this is a classical observation that it's a physical mixture of two important materials. Now further we have confirmed it from TEM diagram. Now look at this picture and this picture. See, this is parent and this is N doped, this is V doped, and this is physically mixed this and this. Now the edges you should see that they are scratched. They are scratched, indicating that the composite is formed. Now you look at this diagram carefully. Now this is photolysis of methyl violet dye. Now it has decomposed about 10% only, photolysis. Now, pure NaNbO3, you take it, its activity is very less. It could decompose only up to 20%. Now, N-doped NaNbO3, you take it. This is also not much from the parent compound. V-doped, you take it, slightly better, but it is still not much. But when you prepare a composite of these two, then you see that more than 90% decomposed. Now, this is a classical, heterojunction that is formed. Unfortunately, I do not know whether I put the slide on the difference between heterojunction and Z scheme, but this is, this sample gave heterojunction for us, because for Z scheme catalysis, we need to do some electrochemical studies also to confirm its presence. Now you look at the methyl violet spectrum. Now at 0 minutes, this is the optical density, but as the time of irradiation increases, now you look at this, that it has gone, about 10% of the original value only. That means the composite is much better than the individual two components. Now this is another method of actually tailoring or increasing the photoactivity of a material. Now, we have also used scavengers to identify the type of material. Now, isopropanol, tertiary butanol, and benzoquinone are normally used commonly. This C is actually gone. Commonly used to quench holes, hydroxyl radicals, and superoxide radicals respectively. That means what? If you do in the presence of benzoquinone, then holes will be scavenged. Once holes are scavenged, then your photoactivity decreases. For example, you see the isopropyl alcohol. Where is the isopropyl alcohol? Now this is the one, black one. Now black one, it is not changed. That means holes are not actively participating in the mechanism of the methyl violet degradation. Then what is participating? See, red is benzoquinone. Benzoquinone means superoxide radicals are formed considerably. So in other words, we can find out the mechanism of the dye degradation using this scavenging test. Now this is once again the highlight, that we take NaNbO3, then visible light, you cannot get the excitation, it cannot give the photoactivity sufficiently. But when you do N-doped NaNbO3 and V-doped NaNbO3, then it gives lot of photoactivity, or photoactivity increases enormously. Now, how is it possible? It is possible like this. Once this and this are excited simultaneously, then the electron can go from here to here. Once the electron has gone from here to here, now the whole, it cannot actually, it cannot combine with the electron here because it has gone there. Now this actively participates immediately. Similarly, when this is excited, holes goes like this. You see, you see the positions, energy position. Holes goes from this position, and this electron will now participate. So this is the methodology to decrease electron hole recombination rate. When electron hole recombination rate increases, the photoactivity increases. Then we have studied whether this catalyst is useful once you use and throw. No, you can actually use 7 times. We have used. My student has used 7 times against the degradation of methyl violet. Now you see in the first cycle 90.38% decomposed in 180. 7th cycle 88. Now why there is a small decrease? There will be small decrease because why? In the cyclic experiments, what happens? First we take methyl violet, catalyst, irradiate. After 3 hours, you remove the catalyst and take fresh MV solution, methyl violet solution, and continue. When you are transferring from this to this experiment, sorry, there may be a partial small loss of catalyst. when a small amount of catalyst is lost, then naturally its percentage decreases. 100% quantitative transformation may not be take place. Therefore, slightly decreases. And in seventh cycle, it has only decreased from 90 to 88%. So this is reasonably good and economically viable, and therefore this material can be effectively used. This composite, heterojunction composite, can be effectively used for degradation of organic dyes. Now, another question comes about the chemical stability of the catalyst after 3 hours of irradiation, or 7 into 3, that is 21 hours of irradiation. Now, you see the spectrum here, before and after. Its powder XRD remains the same. That means catalyst has not changed its structure or transformation. That means this is chemically stable and therefore can be used several times. Now, I have to tell you about this fact because this paper was published in Chemistry Select, and this paper was in the top 50 articles published in Wiley journals for that month. This is really a feather to my student because it has occupied the top 50 position for that particular month in which it was published in Chemistry Select among the Wiley publications. These are some of the conclusions for this. And another interesting material I take, and perhaps this may be the last one or last but one, that we have taken a phosphate also. Now, once again, this is called a layered type of phosphate. And in this, once again, potassium can be replaced conveniently with any ion of your choice. Now, how did we prepare this? This is a very simple method of preparation: potassium nitrate, manganese nitrate, ammonium dihydrogen phosphate. Thoroughly grind it and then heat it at 300 for 12 hours and then cool it, and once again grind it and heat it at 820 for 12 hours. You will get the material. Now, nitrogen doped KMnO3 was prepared by solid state method, and Ag plus and Cu2 plus doped were prepared by ion exchange method. Ion exchange means simply take copper sulfate solution or cupric nitrate solution and take this solid and stir it for 24 hours. You will get the product, this product. Now, this is the powder XRD because characterization is very important. This is a standard which is published in JCPDS data, and this is our compound. This is silver doped, copper doped, and nitrogen doped. Everything actually looks alike only. But when you expand this portion, you will see that the changes will take place. Now you see this. Around 28 we changed. 28, this peak we have taken, and then we have seen that this is the parent compound and silver doped, and this is shifting, this is going this side. So this is a signature that the ions have gone into the lattice. Then we have done some retweeled analysis because people will ask that whether the compound has been analyzed properly or not, and therefore we have to do the retweeled analysis. And this is actually the SEM images. Not much can be deduced from this, but as one of the characterization techniques, we need to show this. Now this is important. Now potassium is there. Now in addition to that, where is the original compound? 1 minute. Silver. See, this is a silver which is not present here, and somewhere copper will be there which is not present, and nitrogen should be present. Nitrogen is present. So this shows, EDS shows that the respective ions are present in the lattice. Now this is how actually the band gap is actually tailored. Now this is the parent compound, and where is the parent compound? I think the red one. Red one is, I think, this one. This one is the parent compound, and all the other materials show less band gap energy compared to the parent material. And this is the emission spectrum. This shows that KMPO shows the least photocatalytic activity because the PL signal intensity is inversely proportional to its photoactivity. this is excitation spectrum. I can skip this. Now this one need not worry, because this is chromaticity diagram where it will absorb. This as a part of the luminescence property, they ask this chromaticity diagrams. One need not worry about in the present scenario. Now this is important. KMPO, parent compound, does not show photocatalytic activity under visible light irradiation, but nitrogen doped one shows visible light activity. Now you see that it has decomposed about 70, and this has decomposed about 80% of the dye degradation has taken place by N-doped material. Now for N-doped material, once again scavenger tests have been carried out, and it shows that both holes, superoxide radicals and hydroxyl radicals are actively participating. These are some of the conclusions drawn from this. And then this is, I think my student is Dr. Sudhakar Reddy, who is working in Osmania University, PG College of Science, Saifabad, has done this work. And it is published in Photochemistry, Photobiology. It's an elsewhere journal with an impact factor of around 3, which is a reasonably good journal. And yeah, what is the role of an engineer and scientist? I always I have to remind the students that you should design materials which can split water into hydrogen and oxygen, or design vehicles which will run on hydrogen. I do not know the latest developments, but future we get cars which are driven by hydrogen, because hydrogen plus oxygen gives rise to water, which is environmentally benign material, and plus energy, and that energy can be used for running the cars. Now I have to end my lecture. I think I have taken enough time, and I would like to acknowledge all my teachers, because without my teachers I would not have been present. And starting one is actually my MSc's teacher, and next one is Professor G. Mehta, who is instrumental. When I just started my research in the University of Hyderabad, way back in 1979, he gave actually the direction for us. Professor Jagannathan is my supervisor, then Professor Balu, my teachers, all my teachers at the University of Hyderabad. And I have to thank Professor Navanith Rao, because he has given a platform for me to do my research at Osmania University. And I thank Professor F.J. Berry, the Open University, United Kingdom, where I had my postdoctoral experience on a CEC fellowship, Commission of European Communities Fellowship. And I thank Dr. Sang Il-sok in South Korea, where I worked in 2007-2008 as a brain pool scientist. I understood how dye sensitized solar cells can be effectively used for energy generation. Now I also thank my seniors, Dr. Mohan Rao, former director CCMB Hyderabad, Dr. Ravi is in USA, and unfortunately Professor Sri Krishna is no more. He is my senior, but very helpful to students. Now, without financial assistance, I would not have done this piece of work, and therefore I am actually blessed with funding. Possibly in about 15 research schemes I completed. Each scheme is more than 3 years, 4 years, and at a time, in my entire career, at a time, I was having a minimum of 1, maximum of 3 research schemes. All funding agencies I would like to acknowledge. DST New Delhi. In fact, DST, my last DST project was completed in March 2020. Sorry, February 2020. And DST New Delhi, I thank DST New Delhi, CSR New Delhi, UGC New Delhi, AP Council of Science and Technology. This is before bifurcation of the state. Department of Chemistry, Osmania University, School of Chemistry, University of Hyderabad, where my doctoral degree was obtained. IICT Hyderabad, even now also I depend for many, spectra I get from IICT Hyderabad, CCMB Hyderabad, then CMET Hyderabad. There my colleague Dr. Muniratnam is working, and we have some collaboration. This is my small group. myself and Professor Prasad, my colleague from physics, because I always believe that interdisciplinary work has to be done, and therefore he is physics. And Muniratnam is also physics. These are all my past PhD students. Possibly, he has submitted already. He has submitted, and these 3 students are there, and one more is now recently added. Small group. And finally, I would like to show this because many a times I felt that I do not have TEM, I do not have FESEM. Nothing is actually, that's not correct. I was sad because I had no shoes until I saw a man who had no feet. So whatever is available, we should hang on with it, and then we should work. And thank you for your patience. If you have any queries, possibly I may answer a few if I know.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your very informative and inspiring session. Sir has clearly explained in a lucid and simple way, giving day-to-day examples so that people from all disciplines can easily understand. Example, the pressure cooker, making an analogy to the hydrothermal process of manufacturing composites. He also explained how photocatalyst and nanotechnology can be used for effective utilization of solar radiation and energy conservation. And we have learned how hydrogen can be used as an alternative fuel source using water splitting technology. Applications, characterization, and synthesis of nanotechnologies was very clearly explained by sir. Personally, I have enjoyed the preparation of silver nanoparticles using tulsi leaves. The session has definitely given insights into unexplored areas and has opened wide scope for research and interdisciplinary field. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Sir, I think we have some question over here. I'll read out the question for you. It is question from M.V. Subbarao, sir. It is that how PVC is reacted with hydroxide and superoxide radicals, though it is saturated polymer. If it has
say again.
Sir, the question is how PVC has reacted with hydroxide and superoxide radicals, though it is saturated polymer. If it has reacted, what are the resultant products?
No, PVC I have not shown. See,
Okay.
I tell you, the tubes, whatever we are having, electric tubes, we use PVC tubes, isn't it?
Okay.
Can you listen? No, the electric, wiring we do it, isn't it? When we do the wiring, the wires are inserted into the tubes, polymeric tubes. Now, these polymeric tubes, if you look at it, after 10 years, you just tap it, it will break. Now, I never said that hydroxyl radicals or superoxide radicals are reacting, but radicals are reacting. In air, what are the types of radicals? We have to know that. But certainly, only the radicals can attack the polymer and then break the polymeric chain. And hence, it becomes weak.
I think the doubt has been clarified by sir. If you have any queries, you can ask him, sir. You can unmute yourself and ask him, sir. Subbarao, sir, are you present? Hello. I think the doubt has been clarified, sir.
Okay.
You can go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Any other thing?
Any other participants, if you're having doubts, you can unmute yourself one by one and can ask questions to sir.
I think alternatively, my mail ID is with Professor Srinivasulu, and if anybody is having any doubt, the participant can actually send a mail to me also. Or if they are in Hyderabad, they can come at any time to my laboratory and then seek clarifications. Or if you want to learn some new techniques like preparation of the materials or composites or nanomaterials, anything, you can come down to Osmania University Department of Chemistry, and perhaps if you are a faculty member, no issue, you can bring one letter addressed to the head, so that now officially you will get permission also, because majority of the students they come from other departments and then do some experiments. I will cite one example. One lecturer from engineering college from Guntur, she has come and then did some experiments, because there the facility of photocatalytic activity facility was not available. Therefore, she has come all the way from Guntur during summer vacation and then completed her experiment. Our head department of chemistry is very nice. He gives permission. Some interested students would like to do some experiments in the department of chemistry.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your support. And I would personally want to visit Book for bioglass ceramic preparation by solder technique, sir. If that would be of great help, sir. And,
Certainly, please. Professor Srinivasul is having my address as well as the mail ID, and you can actually, simply give a mail and then come.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you for
Sir,
that.
one more doubt is posted in the chat box, sir.
Okay.
Which heat treatment is used to produce carbon nanotubes in metals?
See, I think I have not shown that deliberately, because you require the pulsed laser ablation technique. Pulsed PLD technique is required to prepare nanotubes. And in fact, I have not prepared deliberately that, because pulsed laser deposition and other techniques, they are little bit expensive to prepare carbon nanotubes. But let me tell you one very simple technique to prepare the carbon nanotubes. But this is a very cumbersome technique. Now, in the olden days, before the electricity has come to the every street and corner, we used to use kerosene lamps. Kerosene lamp, and kerosene lamp, the soot, we call it as a పొగ వస్తుంది, నల్లటి పొగ వస్తుంది. So in the earlier, we used to have some lanterns, and lantern cleaning, if you look at it, at the top bottom, some carbon depositions will be there. Now that contains actually the carbon nanotube. Now that preparation, 1 kg of that soot, carbon soot, if you do the preparation, if you do the processing, you will get 1 mg. 1 kg of soot gives 1 mg of carbon nanotube. That's not a viable. But carbon nanotubes I have not prepared and not likely to prepare also, because this is an expensive technique.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind cooperation. And we would like to request all the participants to submit the feedback form and join the next session, which is at 2 p.m. Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much, sir, once again.
Sir, we cannot hear you, sir. Srinivasu, sir.
Sir, please unmute your speaker, sir.
Srinivasu, sir, we cannot hear you, sir.
Sir, please unmute your speaker, sir. Srinivasu, sir. Maybe a network issue, ma'am. Sir, please unmute your speaker, sir. Srinivasu, sir.
We now break the session for lunch. Please join the session back at 2 o'clock.
I once again thank you, the authorities of CBIT, for giving me an opportunity to share some of my research works with young faculty members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Can I just leave the meeting?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.